Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Sunny. How's it going?
Pretty good. I feel like this is our most genuine, like, oh, we haven't really caught up yet, catch up that we've had.
True. Yes, we literally just got on the phone. So we're about to catch up on air because we are vulnerable people and we want to let you guys in on our lives. So
We do. Yeah. So well, okay. I am good. I recently got the first vaccine.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, since I'm a teacher.
I didn't know that.
I mean, I'm a worker in education.
Dude, fuck you. I mean, yay.
Yeah, it is super exciting. So my arms and legs were very sore in the day afterwards, but I am happy not to put my loved ones in danger.
That's interesting. Why? Where were all your extremities sore instead of just the arm?
You know, that's a good question. I don't actually know why, but from what I've heard, the worse of a reaction you have, like the stronger your immune system is. Because like older people don't have as strong of a reaction to the vaccine, which kind of shows why they're more vulnerable to COVID too. Because it's usually like your immune system going off that's causing, like headaches or aches and pains or whatever. So I'm just cheering her on, I mean, my immune system has been kind of a shitter because I have an autoimmune disease. So if it's going to attack my body, it had better be attacking these diseases as well. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I tell myself I have a pretty strong immune system, so I can't wait to have everything hurt, have a sinus infection, migraine. It's going to be great. It's going to be kind of like having COVID. Except I won't lose my taste of smell and my sense of taste and smell for the next 6 months, and also potentially like increase my risk for a heart attack when I'm older, which is kind of crazy that that's like something that's being studied currently, whether that's something that's going to affect people who got COVID like in a couple of decades.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
You know what? I mean, okay. This is, again, personal dump, everyone. My uncle passed. Andre, you know this. But he passed by a heart attack just a month ago, and he had tested positive for COVID in the hospital. And they don't know whether he had COVID when he passed or it was that he already had it. Or I should say we don't know. I mean, the hospital didn't tell us much more than he tested positive. But so I am very curious about whether that was related to his heart attack or not, because he was 70. He was a pretty active guy, like very unexpected. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like if he wasn't previously like a sickly person, like to me 70 isn't that old. I think, yeah, like it just isn't. I mean, right? Like in 2021, it isn't that old. So
no, exactly.
Yeah,
and no one. Yeah, he was a pretty active, like healthy dude. Hadn't really had a history of serious heart problems, so I don't know.
Right. So watch out, guys. Maybe COVID is worse than we thought, but like, I mean, I hope you already knew that. I certainly knew that. That's why I'm taking it more seriously than I otherwise would have. I mean, like, right? Like, I think. Well, here's the thing. I think that a lot of don't know that and don't think that because it's just like the flu like belief is still floating around a lot. I know that I live in a somewhat conservative county of California, not proud, and that's a thing. That's a thing. So I mean, I can't. Oh wait, no, you're not there anymore. I was gonna say your county isn't great either, but I mean, well, I mean, your county isn't great either, actually, if I really think about it, I mean, you tell me, am I wrong?
No, I think my current county is more on the liberal side, but
Oh, okay.
maybe where I live, well, I kind of commute though. I don't know if the county where I live is much more likely to be conservative than the county where I work, so.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
You live a different life by
We
day
love
than you
a
do by night.
two-faced
That's
queen.
interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, how's your boyfriend?
Okay. So, for anyone who has heard the tea or is at all interested, I was in a classic Twilight style, Hunger Games style, Divergent
Love
style
triangle.
love triangle. Insert dystopian romance story here. And it was actually so classic. It was my like grown up with childhood friend versus this like new dude, to be fair, who was an ex, who I had like had this hot, fiery relationship with that did not work out. And so my ex came back saying, I miss you, let's try something long distance, because he hadn't been willing to do long distance originally. I had been more committed. And he came back basically saying, you're the one that got away. And I said, okay, keep it that way, bitch. And
You really gave Katy Perry a run for her money. You know?
I really did. And so, and then I decided to try dating my kind of really old, really close friend. And it's been going well. We've been dating for about a month now, and...
Is it really that old? Like 40s? You said my really old, really close friend.
I meant really old, like we've been friends for a long time.
Oh, okay.
No, he is not in his 40s. He would have to be a lot more wealthy for me to be dating him in his 40s.
For you to be dating a 40-year-old. Honestly, too.
But no, it's been wonderful. He's incredibly kind and considerate, and like... someone I would love to be with for a long time. So we'll see how it works out.
No, that's so sweet. That's good to hear. I know you guys are really new, but I mean, like, even now you can already kind of gauge how you feel about him as a person. I mean, maybe not now because you're obviously still in the honeymoon phase, but like, you're a smart person. You're not completely blinded by love. I know you. So, or at least that's the hope, sis. So, and I think even just personally, I think you got a good one with you. So,
thank you. Yes, Andre also knows this, my boyfriend from high school. So,
yeah, I do kind of like indirectly, but yes, I do, and I just looks like a good guy. So. Dude, it's crazy that we went to high school together, you and I, because that feels like a century ago, and also, God, time flies.
I know, right?
Ew, I sound like a boomer. Yeah, gross.
And also for both being from like our high school in our county and everything else, I feel like we're great people, you know? Like...
I know. Everyone there sucks. You know what county I'm talking about. I'm talking about Beep County. And no.
No, I could not agree more, though. Like, really go us for being produced by that county.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, I'm sure I mentioned this before, but, like... Dude, I mean, hell, like, Shannon, also from the same county. Forget county. We're all from the same city, right? We just don't want to say it. We're all from the same fucking city. And that's really interesting because now we live in, like, very different places, right? I know that Shannon's closer to you than she's to me, but still, we're in, like, different... now we're actually all in different counties, actually, for real. And it's just crazy that we all came from one place, but now we're in such different places. But also interesting that, like you said, we came out kind of unharmed because, boy oh boy, like looking at a lot of my peers and colleagues from that time, and seeing where they're at now, you know, I mean, like not to throw shade, but like, shit. So,
oh no, totally. And some of the stories that have come out about our high school about like racist things that happen, and which is wild because it's like the school is vastly white, so like how are you even finding these opportunities really? But
well, I mean, if anything, I think it makes more sense because if it's mostly white and you have just like a very small minority of non-white students, then I think like the gang mentality is even stronger, right? Because it's like a 98% to 2% attack rather than I think it'd be harder to have a lot of racist attacks if it was like 50% non-white students, 50% white students.
Yeah, no, very, very true. It's just not there just aren't many chances to to have an integrated, diverse experience. I guess.
And
for, like,
listen, I do gotta give it though to some of the clubs and some of the teachers at our high school that certainly tried to make it as multicultural and diverse as possible, and I really commend them for that because that was a near impossible task where we were. But
you know, it's very true.
It's crazy.
Like friends that I made through our club that we did after. We did mock trial. When I was thinking about it, I was like, whoa, I think mock trial gathered like probably 90% of the POC population at high school. I mean, not actually.
Yeah.
But it was like, yeah, it was like, whoa, you know what? This is a pretty diverse team considering the school that we're coming from here. So,
dude, mock trial, that's such a throwback. Oh my god.
and our
And
psycho
you stayed in it
psycho
longer.
coach.
Our psycho coach, and you stayed in it longer than I did too.
Mm.
But I'd argue you were also better than I was, so like it makes sense, and I'm sure you enjoyed it even with our coach. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if y'all ever need an attorney in your on like a penny pinch, Sunny she will wear that hat for you illegally, but she'll do it. Just don't ask her for her bar exam results. But I was gonna say, dude, I know we're like not on topic for this podcast at all, but I'm just having a good time, dude. Clubs, I did. What was it? 1 million clubs in high school, and I was insane. I was a little insane, little fucking thing.
I mean,
like
yeah,
it's crazy.
Same. I mean, that's how we became friends, because we were different grades, different
Yes.
classes completely.
I don't even think we shared any classes.
No, yeah, we slowly got to know each other because we were the little club psychos darting from room to room at lunch, doing our little activities.
Listen, I won't say I was wrong about doing the clubs, because like I was doing it because college applications and I wanted to look good, and I can't say that I was wrong. For all I know, I mean, that's why I got into where I went to college, like because I had a really good full what's the word? It's not resume, but whatever, full application, full of shit.
Yeah, no,
And,
same. And you know what? I hate it because I felt almost ashamed in high school because I did so many clubs, and people were like, well, it's not about the quantity, it's about like really engaging deeply with the ones that you do. People would always say that.
No,
shit.
it is about the
no,
quantity.
it is about both. I ended up getting into great school, very proud of myself there. And everyone I know there did like 10 to 15 clubs, like an insane amount of clubs. And you know what? They engaged deeply with all of them. They would be president of a few of them, right? But yeah, so it is both, and I'm very glad that, I mean, I also just did it out of interest. I loved going to all those clubs. So I'm glad I didn't let people, cough Teddy, although go Teddy, he got into a great school too, discourage me from doing several clubs. So
I mean, listen, I hope he never hears this, right? But like, I mean, as far as the listeners, they have no idea who we're talking about, but like, isn't he like a hippie now?
I think so. And you know what? Go him. I love that vibe for him.
Yeah, I think it fits him. He's kind of like, he's got the look. The look suits him.
Oh, 100%. You know what? I'm so bullshitting right now. I have no idea if he's a hippie or not. But I do think it would be great.
He is. You should check out his Instagram.
Okay.
I think that's where I saw it. He looks like a hippie now. He's got the hair, he's got the clothes, or lack thereof. Yeah.
I think it's way too late for me to request to follow him. Or even if it's public, I just don't want to follow. Yeah, it's just too late.
You don't want to scroll in case you accidentally like a post from 3 years ago?
Literally, Andre,
Yeah. I know what that feels like. Not with Teddy, but with other people, that's happened to me. But yeah, listen, I'm definitely a more cynical person than you are. For me, it was, I would say, like 30% engagement and 70% I just want to have shit to write down on paper. But within that 30%, almost all of it was like true curiosity, like genuinely, because and you know that I'm not lying, because I was part of a Christian club for like almost a whole year. So I was genuinely interested in opening my mind, or in that case closing my mind, to new ideas. And so I went out there and I tried everything. Girl, I was part of Star Wars Club for a month. I was part of Star Wars Club for a month. I was part of Robotics Club, which listen. This blonde skinny sis, STEM is not my forte, and I was part of Robotics Club. I went to Chess Club, bitch. I was trying everything.
I went to Chess Club too.
Not that chess is STEM, but like, I just mean like,
we both did ham radio club, Andre.
We did ham radio. That was.
Club.
I think that was harder for me than it was for you. I think I was relatively successful in it, but it was definitely, I think, easier for you because I'm just not a very like strategically minded or like technologically savvy person, especially when it comes to like concepts more complex than or different than computers. Like I'm really into PCs and computers.
I don't know. You were
like,
kind of schooling me on Bitcoin last show, so that might be changing.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that may be changing a bit now. But in high school, I definitely was that kid that was like not about math, not about this, not about robotics. And you know, granted, that could have been just my limiting mindset, because I think if I were to dip my foot in those things now, maybe I'd be better at it. But whatever. Regardless, that is what it was. That is definitely who I was back then. And so I had a hard time in a lot of those clubs. But I still tried it because I was trying to open my mind. So kudos to me.
Yeah, kudos to you. I just love that for us. I mean, same. Yeah, same. Did philosophy club. I also did Christian club for a year, but seriously, it's a dark past. No, literally recently, so Daryush, who was our friend from Mock Trial, had mentioned to me, I don't know if I should have said his name, maybe I should block that out, but he had said to me, you know something, I remember in philosophy club in high school, we once talked about whether God was real, and you said, yes, he is real, and we had questioned you, and you were like, well, if he's not real, what is the worth in living? This was literally...
Wow, you said that?
I literally, and this must have been, Daryush was 2 years below me, so this must have been when I was at least a junior in high school.
Wow.
Which blows my mind.
Wait, Sunny, are you religious?
No. The
today,
thing is, I'm
now?
not religious at all. So.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, it was a big transformation for sure.
Interesting.
That I've thought on it more recently, and I'm like, whoa, I should unpack that. But yeah, I like almost didn't even notice how it was very gradual. But I did start out a Christian.
I wouldn't be surprised. If your environment was part of that, because like where we live, sis, everyone was a WASP, right?
Yeah,
so...
and my mom was super religious. And fun fact, like 90% of people who grew up in very religious households, like where scripture is referenced and talked about and stuff, grew up to be religious themselves. So it's definitely a big household thing. But I guess I was just too internationally minded to...
I guess so. And I was too gay-minded because at 12, I was like, this isn't clicking, sis. And also, it was worse. I was a Catholic, right? I was raised Catholic. So it was even more strict. And it was like, no, like, you can't touch your pee-pee, but the priest can, etc. And I was like, that doesn't pan out. It doesn't make sense. And it's interesting because, like, our family really was like that, like religious, but I already at age 13 was like questioning everything, and then by age 16 I was like a cringe militant atheist, and now I've kind of like calmed down, I guess on the militant part,
like
but I'm
back,
still very much, but I'm still very much, I'm still very much like agnostic, and leaning towards atheists, and have been so for years. Like that's really where I am. I think that the only reason I don't call myself a full out atheist is because I ponder on the possibility of like, well, one, fuck, I could be wrong, and two, like, I mean, I guess there are some things about existence in general that are kind of bizarre and not fully explained by our scientific knowledge as of current, and so I wonder if there is something else out there. But for the most part, I'm like, no, we're all meaningless. Everything we do is meaningless in the grand scale of things. All we have to do is find meaning amongst one another and then die happily, hopefully. That's it.
Yeah.
So
I agree so much. Like, I definitely, maybe there isn't a God, maybe there is. But what I definitely believe is that there's not going to be a single religion on Earth developed by people in culturally specific contexts that properly explains, like, the universe and God. There's just not going to be one.
Sunny, watch us talk like this, and then we die in 60 years, and then Mohammed is up at the gates. Like, you guys fucked up. And we're like...
Okay, but actually, I mean... Dude, and then God. Buddha and Jesus come out of nowhere to say, like, yeah, you fucked up.
And they're like, we just work here. And I think some of you guys confuse us for the God, and we just work here.
No, I mean...
Oh my God, it's so funny.
For real. Or even worse, 50 years from now, when we're 10 years from death, we're so scared of that possibility that we do become religious. I swear to God, it's like the older people are, the more religious they are.
I know that happens. I know that happens to a lot of people. I want to say that that's not going to happen to me, but of course, you never know where you're going to be in life, in your mindset in however many decades. But that does happen to people, that they all of a sudden become very religious because they're scared of death. I hope that doesn't happen to me, just because, like, I've held a belief for some time now that, like, you shouldn't be scared of death, or you should try to unscare yourself as much as possible, just because, like, what's the point?
Right?
It's gonna happen. It happens to everyone. It's
Yeah.
unstoppable. So, like, try to deprogram that fear.
I completely agree, Nothing more natural. It really do just be happening all the time, 24/7. If billions and billions of people could handle it before you, it'll work out for you too, I guess.
Right. Like, it's just, I mean, although that's a very interesting conversation that we should have on another episode about, like, I've heard a lot of stuff about how in our lifetimes, like, the life expectancy of humans could be increased, like, a shit ton, through artificial means. Not just 1 or 2 years, right? Like, maybe 10, maybe 20.
I've heard that too. Yeah, like within the next couple of centuries, it might even be increased to like 200 years. That's like a very generous estimate, though.
If you're talking about centuries, because that's not within our lifetime, if we do die naturally, right? But if you're talking about centuries, at that point, you have people theorizing that we could be eternal, really, for all that we know, because the kind of technologies that they're working on would at that point include things like basically just downloading your memory onto a different, more resilient body, right?
Oh, yeah.
So becoming, I guess, completely cyborg.
Yeah,
and at that point, you really are, like, immortal.
Yeah.
So,
wouldn't it suck if you, like, died just before that happened? It's like, you see in the Apple News, it's like, prototype released to upload your consciousness as AI, and then you die on the spot, and you're like, holy...
Dude, like, yeah, like, what if they have the body OS? Like, what if, like, you check your iPhone, and it's like, BOS, like, 13.4 update just released, and, like, you're about to, like, get your first body iPhone. I don't even know how that would work, but, like, then you die right before you get it, or right before it arrives. Oh my god, imagine paying for an iPhone and then you die and you don't get a refund. Fuck.
That's really the worst part of it, not getting your iPhone refund. No, you know what I had wanted to discuss? I watched that H3 podcast, and they talked about some really interesting tea with James Charles being a predator and David Dobrik being a true ass. Like, okay. And I want to discuss that, but we don't really have time. But it is on my mind.
No. We have time. Even if it's just a couple minutes, because listen, it's been 90 episodes, sis. I have come to accept the fact that this podcast is only half scary. I've come to accept the fact that we named this podcast accurately. It is half scary and half talk. So you go.
Thank you. Well, you know what? If you say so, I love it. So, I watched this podcast. It's like 2 hours long, so usually I don't watch the full episode. I'll like skip through and stuff. But I watched almost all of this episode because it was so interesting. And part of it is that one of my best friends in college really liked David Dobrik. And so I had just seen him through her, and she was like in love with him, and he was this like really just fun, upbeat white guy making lots of YouTube videos about, his pranks and stuff. But they were talking about how recently this guy, what was his name? I forgot his name. I think it was Noel, something like that, came out. Yeah. And he was basically a black guy who had joined this group of like white vlog pranksters for a while to do stuff with them. And they had pulled this prank on him where they had him make out with what they told him was a woman in a suit, like a suit that made her just look gross, like with a gross mask on. But who they actually had in the suit was like a dude in his 40s from the prank group.
Right.
Who was
Jason Nash.
Yes. Who was, I don't know, another classic dude. So they had him make out with Jason. And then he afterwards found out and was like, oh my God, and was freaked out. And they did it to him a second time. And basically he, years after leaving the group, a year or two, like came out being like, you know what, that was sexual assault. Like I had called a hotline, and being able to say that it was sexual assault made me break down in tears because it had really affected me. And there was another instance of him, like, opening a fridge, and I think it was, like, a bunch of watermelons had fallen out or something. Basically a very, like, racially charged joke that they played on him. And then there was one other person who had come out who was a little person who had similar accounts of, like, just feeling like he was the scapegoat of jokes and whatnot, but he had to put up with it to be within this very, like, high-profile like millions of subscribers YouTube group. And I find it fascinating that, again, in this group of like white chummy guys, it's a little person and a black guy who come back saying like this was shitty. I feel like that's very indicative of like the kind of pattern that they were following of shitting on someone who wasn't like them. And I am just really, I'm very much on the side of the folks who came out. I mean, I don't know, their stories are plausible, they're not deniable. The prank happening twice is literally on camera because they published and monetized it. So yeah, I just think that's like shitty. Like that should be a human instinct to say like, oh, I shouldn't do this to my friend, even for a funny prank. I don't know.
Well, he probably didn't think of him as a friend, right? He thought of him as just part of the squad, and the squad makes me money, and I'm going to have to do whatever I have to do to make money, and if that means humiliating some of the members, then that's what it is, and hopefully they're fine with it. They're certainly getting paid, so whatever. That's probably what he thought.
I guess so. That is... Thanks for your cynical perspective there, Andre. That seems pretty accurate.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be somewhat cynical. That might not even be enough cynicism, because like this person's a millionaire. They like film their lives constantly. You have to wonder what that does to the human psyche, right? You probably become like a super duper fake person, and all of a sudden like money is a lot of what your life revolves around, because like fuck, if especially if you didn't grow up with a lot of it, which he didn't. He's like from a Eastern European country like Slovakia or something.
Oh, is he really?
Or something. Yeah, he is. So, which actually makes this all the more ironic, because like he like this American frat bro culture that they're like enacting within their group. It's kind of funny that he's like, oh, haha, yeah, let's laugh at the outsiders, when he himself is an outsider.
Immigrant boy turns frat boy prank.
Yeah, but I mean, he looks white enough and doesn't really have an accent, so I guess that's why. But yeah, I definitely saw some of that drama. For me, here's the thing. Trisha Paytas is like super problematic.
Oh yeah.
Not only because like, I mean, morally speaking, but for me it's more like I can't believe, I don't know what to believe of her when she says and doesn't say things. But I also just like her.
Oh, same. Wow, we should discuss this.
Right, and I feel like sometimes I just know that she's really serious about something and telling the truth. And every time she talks about David Dobrik saying that he's a fucking monster, she always has like a lot of receipts and a lot of like weight in her voice, and I'm like, fuck, like I'm really inclined to believe. So yeah. Yep.
No, I would agree, and especially now that other folks have come out, and luckily she and Ethan have like covered their stories, and I think interviewed them. Was it Ethan who interviewed? They interviewed them maybe a year back. But no, I would agree. Trisha, I first saw her through the podcast and was like, oh, she seems kind of like she's recovering from a lot of shit, but fun. And now I've seen more of her like genuinely awful, problematic stuff. But I would agree, just in this situation, not even dependent on her, just looking at all the other testimony that's come out. Testimony, that's a mock trial term. Very inclined to believe. And
did you hear her talk about Shane?
No, actually, that's the one drama I really have not heard much about, other than seeing the memes of him with cats.
To me, that's more sad than anything, just because they were friends for a long time, like 10 years, and now they're not, because in my personal theory, in my head, because Shane kind of became corrupted by all the money that surrounded him and basically chose his new friendship with Jeffree Star over the friendship with Trisha. And the reason he had to choose, or there was even a decision to make, is because Trisha and Jeffree just cannot get along at all, because Jeffree was really, really mean to Trisha and basically like made fat jokes and shit. And so because like Shane wouldn't disavow that at all, Trisha was like, okay, well, I guess we can't be friends anymore, which really hurt her, because she really didn't want to do that, and also because she stood up for Shane and all of his scandals for the past like 10 years. But alas, she had to do that to protect herself, and I totally agree. Like, you have a really shitty friend and they're not standing up for you and you're standing up for them. That's not healthy. That's not a reciprocal relationship. Yep.
It's really cute though. I'm really happy to see her and Ethan with this several months long now friendship as
I know.
Yeah, right? As in-laws. It's insane.
I really thought the podcast was going to last 3 episodes, and that's it.
No, same. And literally a year ago, over a year ago now, they had been beefing. Before they were related in any way, they were just, like, having drama online.
Right.
And now they're in-laws and, like, having this regular podcast and seem like they're becoming really good friends, so.
It really shows you that things can just turn around at any moment. Like, life is crazy.
Life is so crazy.
Now... Before we get into the real meat of this, I just want to give you an update on Britney Spears. recently,
We've really got tea today.
we do. Recently, Britney landed some really unlikely support from Congress. This is really insane. So, conservative Congressman Matt Gaetz, and he's from Florida. He basically tweeted that, or rather, someone tweeted his statement that he made to the House. He was like, "There's something really weird going on here with Britney Spears' case. Like this multi-platinum performing artist is like been held in a conservatorship since 2008, and it's been court ordered, and like the facts and circumstances around this arrangement are like really weird and questionable. Like, and there's some legal tactics that have been employed by her dad and her conservator, right, are the same person, Jamie Spears, which are really like squirmy and like questionable, and we don't like that. And it's just the fact that like an actual politician like said this to a committee of people that just has me shook, right? And the I think the committee conversation or whatever was going to be on the topic of conservatorships, and so like it was obvious that he was going to take Britney Spears as an example because that's something that's really salient in popular culture right now. But I'm still just kind of I'm very shocked that like Britney Spears was brought up in Congress.
As she should be. So, yeah. I'm glad.
I know. So that's definitely some, at the very least, indirect support, and at most, well, I guess direct support of the Free Britney movement. So from a politician. So there's that.
Love that. Adore that.
Yeah, dude. This is just a fucking waiting game at this point. That's all I have to say. So we'll see.
Okay.
Now, we're gonna switch to an only slightly darker topic, 9/11. So I hope you like that segue. I try to be as seamless as possible.
Oh my god!
So Britney Spears to 9/11.
Okay.
Now 9/11 happened. Okay, no, here
Dude,
before we talk about this, I'm gonna say this. I think that for this topic, just because I don't need Homeland Security knocking on my door, I'm going to refrain from telling the audience what if any of the theories that we're going to talk about I personally agree with. But really, I don't think there's any need to anyway, because you and the audience know me really, and I like what is obvious needs not be said. So that's all I'll say. Okay.
And I'll be pretty open here. I don't know.
Yeah, because you're gonna be like boring as fuck. You're gonna be like, oh, like no, the theories are false.
Yeah, and maybe because I'm so boring, I'm just gonna say a bunch of random stuff, and then I will get kidnapped by someone from the government, and you all will see what really happens. So. No, that's all real. And also, just in regards to talking about 9/11, first of all, I'm just really, really sad. Getting that out of the way, like, we'll probably crack jokes and whatnot, because death is funny, death is what it is.
Yeah, and also, hello, you're listening to this podcast, like, you should know what to expect at this point, but, like, that doesn't mean we're laughing at the people who died. Like,
no, absolutely.
Come on, sis. Like, don't assume things you just know are false. You guys know we're not those kind of people. We're not making fun of the dead. So
yeah, and I mean, just to give that moment here, like, huge tragedy, thousands of people dying, and just like, and more thousands affected, right, in the families that lost people. So yeah, just a moment for that. It is really sad, and I
so now let's talk about how our own government potentially did that to those poor people.
Let's hit it. Okay.
What you got?
Random segue. This is a fun one. My favorite show on Hulu, one of my favorite shows on Hulu is Rami, which is about the experience of this Egyptian American Muslim growing up, and mostly him as an adult. And he has this episode where he talks to like the ghost of Osama bin Laden and stuff. And it's really interesting, because it's he was like a teenager / like younger kid in middle school when 9/11 happened, and so it shows him being at school and picking up a phone call from his mom in Arabic, and having to deal with like everyone staring at him, and of course like a lot of the like racial bias and prejudice that happened towards him and his family as a result, even though he's like Egyptian American, which is just like, I mean, which is literally a different country in the Middle East anyway. Not even in the Middle East, in Africa. But anyways, so I think, I don't know, it was just interesting watching that because it gave me a very, I don't know, personalized feeling of it, like to see Osama bin Laden humanized like that. And I just think in general with this, when we're talking about these things, it's wild how much the US has done that I, as a US citizen, don't know about. Like, I had taken a class on the Korean War, and it turns out the border between North and South Korea was drawn by US troops, because it was like a US conflict that occurred there that caused the split. And there are situations like that all over the world, like South America, Middle East, South Asia as well. You're going to find countries and regions where like their entire political landscape for the last century has been like shaped by the US, and we don't know anything about it. And that's very much how I felt about the Middle East for a long time. So it was cool to kind of delve into that in terms of like why 9/11 happened, like what is Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, what is the like history and context here. So that was a huge overview.
No, that's fine. I remember watching like this hour-long video about how the U.S. intervention in the Middle East in the 70s and 80s in their quest to extract petroleum and their relationship with Saudi princes and whatnot, and kind of like the way that they changed the cultural landscape in the area is a lot of what led to the rise of Osama bin Laden and therefore the rise of Al-Qaeda, because for better or for worse, the U.S. exerted a lot of influence on the area because they were giving the area and the powerful people in it a lot of money in exchange for oil, and then that, but like, and also in exchange for the U.S. being able to have a military like settlement, like a military, what the fuck are they called? Zone in there, but then like that made it so that like obviously you have troops living there and their families, and there was like a cultural clash because a lot of the natives would see like the Americans living their lives the way that Americans do, right? Which is completely different than like, you know, no fucking body, face coverings, all this shit. And like that made a young, rebellious Osama bin Laden like want to take action, and then when his own government was like, no, we actually like the US giving us money, he was like, oh well, this is very Islamic of you, and like his reasoning isn't, I mean, certainly to my Western mind, right, like isn't very good or nice or like right, I'm like, oh, come the fuck on. But I mean, listen, if that's your fucking life, if that's your fucking culture, if that's your fucking religion, like, and that's all you know, like having an external like party come and disrupt that, and then having the feeling that the people that are supposed to be protecting that, you know, religious fundamentalist culture aren't protecting it, and you have even their most remote seed of extremism within you, it is only obvious to assume that that's going to be ignited, and then you're going to want to take action. And that's kind of the rise of this man, right? So
yeah, and you know what, religious fundamentalism, not so different here, right? You can think about it with extreme Christians who believe everyone who's not Christian is going to hell. Sure, you know, I mean, some of them are shooting up schools or whatever it might be, but hopefully there's not terrorist acts. But when you just think about that ideologically, they're 100% accepting that anyone who just doesn't choose to believe in their God, right? Any good person on the street that they meet who's raising children and living their own life and doing their own things in a very similar way to how the Christians are, is gonna burn in hell just because they don't follow the same belief system. That's a pretty extreme, right, I would say, like, inhuman belief to hold about the people around you. Yeah, and anyway, yeah.
Right, it's crazy. It's crazy because like God is dead and we killed him in the 90s, and like, so
why believe in him
all
now?
The fuss,
yeah,
right? Right, exactly.
Yeah, but getting to our background here, 9/11, which has become such a famous date now, refers to 9/11/2001, September 11th. And what happened on this day was that there were 4 American flights that were hijacked by, I think it's 19 people total. And these 4 flights, 2 of them crashed into the Twin Towers, which eventually collapsed. And then a third one crashed into the Pentagon, and a fourth one, which was headed towards the White House in DC. The crew and passengers actually kind of were fighting back enough to where the hijackers had to crash the plane early, and it crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. So a lot of lives were probably saved there. That's a really interesting sort of it's a little like mini American hero story in and of itself with that plane. But obviously the most famous crash is the two planes that crashed into the Twin Towers, World Trade Center, because those towers crashed, and as a result, nearly 3,000 people died. It was 3 people short of 3,000. So, yeah. So that's our background here. Do you want to cover the reasoning for how the U.S. government might have caused this?
I mean, I think I'm just gonna get to the meat of what a lot of theories draw from as far as the day this actually happened, and I think maybe then I'll go back and be like, and maybe this means the government was involved.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, you have 1,000. Yeah, we're just gonna fucking get into this. Like, you have 1,000 demolition experts, right? That are like, this was a controlled demolition. And you have had those people, one, create coalitions, and two, they've been around since this fucking happened. Like, this isn't like some like new bullshit someone's trying to stir up just to keep the conspiracy alive. You had people like a week after this happened being like, unlike early 2000s internet, right? Like blogs making think early Reddit being like, this looks like a controlled demolition. So like, it's interesting. I mentioned this because I think we have this image in the zeitgeist of kind of a collective unity that took place after the attacks, and that meant that like there was no one questioning the nature of the attacks, and yet that isn't true. I think that everyone was really hurting, and everyone was really rooting, obviously, for the U.S. because we had just been attacked. But you had people that were like, but wait a second. Yes, we were attacked, but who actually attacked us? I have some questions. I have some doubts. Those people were there from the beginning. So that's and some of them were fucking engineers, architects, demolition experts, and they said this looks planned. Not only that, but I mean, I'm not gonna say personally, but like, I'm certainly drawn to the fact that it's funny.
Government, are you listening? Andre does not agree. He is just pointing out and drawn to the fact that
I'm drawn to the fact that it's funny that a lot of 9/11 conspiracy theories are always subjected to like so much scrutiny and skepticism, and yet the whole like FBI/CIA story about some crazy Saudi hijackers is basically accepted without any rigorous inquiry. So there's that. I guess as far as the day of, really, like, the fact that the thing looked like a controlled demolition to some people is really the only thing that I can think of as far as like the day of. So now I'm gonna start going back to what some people speculate on as far as like actual government actions. So here's something, right? The government, there's been like a shit ton of reports on this. The White House received more than one intelligence report that covered the fact that that intelligence had received information relating to Al-Qaeda planning a possible terrorist attack on U.S. soil. And this was a couple of, or at least 1 month before the attack happened. This was in early August. So there's that. And basically there was a government investigation inquiry that was made after the attacks to basically look into possible like government negligence, right? Like negligent actors within the White House and whatnot. And this report basically found that those initial intelligence reports had basically been ignored by the powers that be, and that at the very least is negligence, or at the very most is like intentional, deliberate, trying to just sweep shit under the rug and, you know, like ignore these reports because you, one of the powerful actors, knows what's actually going to happen and what's actually going on, and it's not like you actually care about the intelligence reports, right? Like, you know, they don't mean anything because it's all an inside job if that's what it was. So I mean, like, listen, this shit gets pretty dark, right? Especially the inside job theory, which is just the most blatant, like, obvious, like, opposite, like, theory to what the official version is. But also, like, I don't want anyone coming for me because, like, come the fuck on. Like, people have been hearing this for fucking ever. Like, Bush did it is literally, like, part of our zeitgeist. It's like a catchphrase. So...
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so I don't want 2021, like, woke Gen Z, which, like, listen, I consider myself woke. It's not a derogatory term. I'm just saying, I don't want, like, woke Gen Z coming to me and being like, how dare you, like, blah, blah, blah. Which, funny enough, I actually think the opposite would happen. I think that a lot of, like, young people nowadays are probably like, yeah, inside job. But just in case I'm wrong, I don't need people coming for me and, like, come on, like, be real, be genuine, don't act as if, like, I'm the first person voicing this. Hello. So there's that.
Okay.
Thoughts?
So there are three main things that would contribute to my being drawn to this same theory. No, so the first thing that would, so I'll list how I agree with you, and then I'll list, like, what gives me doubts. So the first things that make me agree with this as a theory is, one, someone had pointed out that Osama bin Laden's original hideout was in Afghanistan, which is separated from Iraq by Iran, which is a huge country. Like, Afghanistan and Iraq are pretty far apart. And when Bush originally declared the war on terror, he declared it on Iraq, which is, like, a related country that I think ended up also being a place Osama bin Laden was at one point, but it's, like, not... It's kind of just like, oh, here's another country in the Middle East, and I'm going to declare war, and they do have oil. I don't know. So that was one thing that was brought up that I just thought was interesting. I don't know. If someone has some way to debunk that as to how the two countries are related or why he did that, please do let us know. Another thing is, someone had brought up, or I watched in a YouTube video about thermites, I guess, which was this specific thing found in the, like, ashes after 9/11 that relates to the explosive used. And they're, like, pretty specific, and the theory was that this had to have been planned for thermites to have been found. I also read another article that said that thermites were found because they're used in this specific type of, like, printer ink, and so that was just a result of this being an office building. I'm not an expert, I can't really differentiate on that, but that's the two sides of that. And the last thing that I think is most interesting that would contribute to me being more open to this, because in general, I'm pretty opposed to conspiracy theories. I've seen them used really harmfully. Nowadays, I see people using them as a reason not to get the vaccine. I watched them really tear apart my mom, who believed in a lot of false things that really negatively contributed to her mental health, actually, and made her really paranoid just about, like, living. So I think conspiracy theories can be really harmful. I've seen it firsthand. But a non-conspiracy theory, an open and published report from the government, was something we covered in a previous episode, Operation Northwoods. And Operation Northwoods, which happened in the 60s, in 1962, was a proposed operation by the CIA to President at the time, Kennedy, to have a false act of terrorism, to fake that Cuba had committed some kind of act of terrorism. There were different recommendations, having a ship sink, having a plane be shot down, or, you know, giving the appearance of it being shot down, doing something like that, and then blaming it on the Cuban government to justify a war against Cuba. And luckily, at the time, President Kennedy said, no thanks. But had he said yes, that could have been something that the US government did. And just the fact that that's even within, like, the arsenal of things that the CIA would be willing to list in a report and suggest in the 60s, I think bolsters my belief, oh, maybe our government is kind of sketchy. Like, maybe something like this could have happened.
The question isn't whether the government is kind of sketchy. I think our government is uber sketchy. It's more like, who is it sketchy towards? Is it its own people or other people? Because other people, I mean, it's still terrible, but I'm not surprised. No one is. But it's our own people and those stories that come out when it's like, oh, I mean, girl, I'm not gonna get into this, but like, my god, experiments against people, like using people of color, like in 60s, 70s, 80s, MK Ultra, like taking advantage of the homeless and disadvantaged, like oh my god, when HIV/AIDS was coming around, like the people who were impacted and people who were not, like, I mean, there's so many instances that are verifiable of our government like actively acting against the interest of its own people.
No, yeah.
That are like you can't ignore, and I think people try to ignore them because it's the past and it happened 40 years ago or whatever. But like, who gives a fuck? Like 40 years ago was not long ago.
Yeah, no, 100%. And oh, you know, and one other thing was that Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda originally formed as an anti-Soviet Union force because the Soviet Union was occupying Afghanistan at the time, I think it was. And they didn't like that, and they said, let's form a force against these occupying forces. So originally, Osama bin Laden had actually worked with the CIA against the Soviet Union because Cold War, and then Soviet Union left, the US came and was occupying Afghanistan, I think because of the Gulf War. And then, I don't think it was Afghanistan that they occupied because of the Gulf War. I know it was, I think it was Iraq invading Kuwait. So that was the deal there. But at that point, Al-Qaeda's like, oh, new occupying forces, the US is our enemy now. But meaning that Osama bin Laden and the CIA had some line of communication previously, which I think also makes the theory a little more plausible that they worked together in 9/11. Again, I'm not fully convinced on it, but I am not super convinced that the government was necessarily against it either. Maybe I am on the they let it happen boat. I don't know.
Right, because there's two camps, right? There's the, what was it? Made it happen on purpose camp of the conspiracy theory, and then there's the let it happen on purpose conspiracy camp. So, and the difference between those two, like there's conspiracy theories that think that the government was simply negligent and they knew that this thing was going to happen, but they let it happen for whatever reason, which to me is bizarre because, like, okay, well, what would be the reason for that? And if they're already going to let it happen, why not at that point then just get involved and actively make it happen, right? And then there's the camp of the government made it happen on purpose, which is pretty self-explanatory. So, and I find that one far more interesting, and also it makes sense that more people fall on that believe this conspiracy theory fall in that boat because it's way more sensical. Like the government had a vested interest in making this happen, and so they acted accordingly, and did. Right? That's the theory.
And that motive being oil money, of course.
The motive being oil, which, as you explained, like gets dubious when you consider the fact that the U.S. was in Iraq and then in Afghanistan, and like where we eventually like drew the oil from was Afghanistan, where we eventually like declare war again was in Afghanistan. And so I know that raises some questions because you're right, two different places, but I don't know. I'm still not unconvinced that like that makes sense, because they're separate but like also close enough. And also, if Afghanistan had oil resources that the U.S. was aware of, and like maybe they had already depleted Iraq's oil resources or whatever, then like why not go attack a new country, right? Like, I mean, if you believe in this theory, that certainly wouldn't be a far-fetched assumption, because the need for oil is very much salient in modern economy. So. Yeah.
I do wonder, though, I read something that said only 15% of U.S.'s oil amount is from the Middle East. 50% of it is North American, and then there was another percentage from other places. But only 15%, and that has to be shipped thousands and thousands of miles. So I'm not sure if oil is a good enough reason to have done something at this scale. And just also in terms of general discussion of this, I read another really interesting, and this is actually stats that were found at my school, my university, the Watson Center for International Affairs, which was a center at Brown. Very proud. They came up with this statistic that during U.S. occupying forces and the whole war on terror and whatever, which was supposed to target specific anti-U.S. groups and whatever and blah blah blah, and was probably partially used in terms of U.S. economic interests, it displaced an estimated 37 million like civilians, right? Because yeah, which is that's like so. I had not realized how huge that number was. Like the U.S. has basically been like, oh, let's just put in a government that's friendly to U.S. Interests, or let's make some money here, or like target this group and do this thing, and sometimes justified, sometimes not, I think, but.
So maybe it wasn't oil. I mean, maybe you're right, and maybe it was just they were aiming to. I mean, if this theory is true, right? They were aiming to destabilize another foreign country and try to install a more U.S. friendly democratic government in a place where they saw like a strategic location, right? I mean, which like I guess could make sense because the Middle East is literally in the middle of like a lot of different places, right? I mean, that's certainly a theory. One, because we know that it's happened before in South America, and so that wouldn't be far fetched. But I mean, I really don't know at this point because like I'm just speculating. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
no, totally. Well, just, I would agree.
Also, you guys heard it here first. Sunny went to Brown. Yes, we edit this. You're skinny and blonde and smart. Meanwhile, I went to fucking CSU Chico. No, just kidding.
Why is I didn't, CSU but Chico also no like shade. The auto roast school? It's so funny.
No shade to Chico. We stand, but no, I didn't go there. But well, actually, I was gonna add to. I was gonna add kind of really two more things as far as the conspiracy fodder, right? Like what's fed this conspiracy for the time that it has been fed for. Two more aspects that I haven't touched on yet are, one, the famous jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams, which true, but actually on this one I think I might push back a little and say that's not the problem though. Like the problem isn't that it doesn't melt them. The problem is that, like, yes, jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams, but it does weaken them. And if you now have weakened steel beams, like further impact, it would very much make sense that further impact would destroy this building's beams, right? Because they've now been weakened. Like, yes, jet fuel is not hot enough to melt them, and there were some melted steel beams that were found at the scene of like the attack after the fact, and some people were like, what, that's super fucking weird, that they shouldn't have melted, because fire certainly wouldn't melt them, and the jet fuel certainly wouldn't melt them, which I think is like what the government was saying at the time. And I mean, if that's true, which it seems like it is, then the government surely shouldn't have said that. They shouldn't have gone with that, right? But alas, it is at least true that jet fuel does weaken steel beams, and from there, I think you can topple a building more easily. So there's that. And finally, the claims of insider trading on the days leading up to 9/11 are very concerning, and also something that people touch on a lot when discussing this conspiracy theory, and that is the fact that there was an extraordinary amount of, they're called put options. I'm not going to go into this, but it's like stock market speak, that were placed on United Airlines and American Airlines stocks, and there's a speculation that insiders obviously may have known in advance of 9/11 and they placed their bets accordingly, and so
so had folks like not or like had folks bet basically that those stocks would go down? Like, was there a
I mean, yes. So precisely, and that's alleged insider trading. And if that were to be proven true, that's like uber illegal, and like also proves a lot of things that maybe a lot of people don't want to be proven or brought to light. Right?
There was actually an analysis really interesting.
yeah, and like it's interesting how evidence comes from the most unlikely places, because like you see a destruction, you see like an attack somewhere, and the first and really only, at least in my mind, thing you like place you think to look is at the attack, right? The scene of the attack, the people involved, not in the stock market, and yet it seems like there might be something here to look at. There was an actual there was an analysis conducted by the Journal of Business, which is an important publication here in the States, that, I'm just going to read this short quote, said that a, quote, measure of abnormal long put, that's for put options, volume was also examined and seen to be at abnormally high levels in the days leading up to the attacks. Consequently, the paper concludes that there's evidence of unusual option market activity, that means selling and buying shit, in the days leading up to September 11 that is consistent with investors trading on advanced knowledge of the attacks.
Whoa.
And that's the end of that quote.
Shut up.
And the Journal of Business, and specifically Alien M. Pottisham, who is the person who that quote actually belongs to within the publication, the Journal of Business really said, we have steel balls.
Yeah. Wait, so that's a peer-reviewed paper that was published. That's legit. That's as legit as it comes.
Yeah. This is an academic journal, and it's published by the press of the University of Chicago, so it's a big deal.
Chicago, y'all. This is literally where knowledge is created. Oh my god.
Obama went to U Chicago, so
yeah.
No, I mean, dude, like, okay. Sunny and I are literally 16, right? We're gonna do a piss poor job of like covering the complexity that is the 9/11 like conspiracy. Well, that is just the 9/11 attacks and the conspiracies attached to it. But like, trust that these conspiracies have existed in the American zeitgeist for so long, not just because they're juicy and interesting to think about, but because there's actually verifiable evidence backing the notion that they could be true to this day.
Okay.
So,
but with that, look out, because there are conspiracy theories that have held traction for a while that don't have evidence backing them up. I would call this one of the more credible ones.
I mean, listen, I'm so glad that you call me out with that double-edged sword, because that is very true. And I think a lot of people could say the same thing about QAnon. I mean, I certainly couldn't, because I certainly don't see that quote-unquote like verifiable evidence that they would use to be comparable to the verifiable evidence that you could use for something like 9/11. But I'm sure if you're in QAnon, you think differently, and you think, nope, this verifiable evidence that we have definitely backs the notion that everything we believe in is true. So you're right. I could be totally biased.
Thinking about some of the most credible explanations for why it might have been a real Al-Qaeda plan, not related to the U.S. government. I've basically read a really interesting article on just a lot of like cultural factors. Basically just why Al-Qaeda is a real organization and Bin Laden is a real person. It doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't work with the U.S. military at all, but it would mean at least that this was not orchestrated by the U.S., right? That this was internally motivated, and that the U.S., if it was involved, was just involved partially or indifferent to it or something like that. So there are, I think there's a very solid foundation to believe that that this was internally. Of course, there's talk of religious motivations. Certain readings of the Quran basically believe that we live in a modern age where everyone's a pagan. It's really funny because these literally sound like things that my mom could have said, who was an extreme Christian. So it's like it doesn't feel, I don't know, it doesn't feel that weird to me. But basically this belief that things are going really wrong and that there needs to be some kind of like religious movement to bring the world back on course. There's radicalization of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. So basically after the war with the Soviet Union, there was a more radicalized generation of Arab militants. They had gained experience against the Soviet Union and were more willing to use that against the US. So this is basically, we're coming off of a historical period where folks are radicalized, where they do own an agenda. there's also this general cultural phenomenon of humiliation. It's really interesting because China had where China was at like an economic low and the US was this huge power, and this new economic age. So same idea here. And like, you know, does whatever we want essentially in different portions, which has been exacerbated because the Middle East was really strong for a long time, right? Ottoman Empire, if you've taken any, they were just tearing it up. But after the First World War, they were truly in France, and since then the Middle East has really been struggling economically, which strikes at the heart of it, right? Because when you have a country that, or when you, not just country, but you have a region that's struggling economically where so much of the GDP, that means people aren't getting fed, right? That means that there's like, when you're struggling economically, most stressful times are going to be the times where you don't have money to fulfill your basic needs. And I think it's the same, especially while being invaded by the US, which is like a very clearly economically is just like a tough thing to come to grips with. There's other sort of reasonings here. Oh, this is a really interesting thing. So basically there's this study where someone not a study, just for this specific article, recent anti-Western terrorist attacks, and they found that on average 1 in 4 have attended colleges in the West. So it's not just like people who have grown up super insulated. In college, and the idea is that there's a lot of alienation of through basically like really poor cross-cultural or extreme after having lived in the West, and they become more militant, right? Because live in the West, you see like all this wealth, and a lot of it being thousands of dollars in funding a year that goes into bottles of vodka.
Right.
That would be tough. Although, to be fair, a lot of terrorists are not from in the Middle East. That's not to say it's necessarily like a...
I have heard about that stat. That is really interesting. Yeah, I agree.
Interesting. And a lot of them do become... I think it's also this interesting crossover of Western beliefs where... I don't know. That's a whole thing that I could get into, but it doesn't really... That's more supported by just my instincts and not a lot of stuff that I'm reading. So I'm not going to get into that. But basically there's a lot of cultural stuff that's really interesting. There's also... a clash within Islam really between basically more radical this is a really funny quote, who believe that the modern Middle East is living in a state are living in the modern age and figuring things out and not clash even within Islam. There's a real ends of the spectrum by extremists because they're kind of this minority. Yeah, and then there's some reasoning here about Bin Laden's strategy for 9/11, why it is that he would have been the one to orchestrate it. It is flawed. It's not perfect. hit the White House. Although you could argue that maybe that was planned too, because that would have been too heavy of damage to take. But
Yeah, you could argue that, certainly. I mean, well, actually, while you were talking, everything you said I found really interesting, but while you were talking, I actually jotted down two more things that I wanted to talk about, just really quickly. More feed to the conspiracy, right? Two other notions that I forgot to mention that I just thought of, and those were, one, I know that part of the conspiracy theory is about Flight 93, right? The flight that was like allegedly like the passengers took over the plane because the plane was being hijacked, but the passengers like made sure that it didn't land on, my God, what was it? It was in the Pentagon, but
oh yeah, that one
whatever.
was supposedly going towards the White House in DC.
Okay, there you go. Okay, but the right, so theories, so the conspiracy theorists basically theorize that really the plane had to be shut down by the government because passengers had found out about the alleged plot, and they actually were like starting to call and text people, and I guess they didn't, yeah, like they didn't think, right, if this theory is true, the government didn't think of this beforehand and didn't have a plan B besides shooting the plane down. And so when this did start to happen, that the passengers somehow found out where this plane was actually headed and what was going to happen, the government was like, well, shit, we gotta shoot the plane down, and we can't actually like let it land on the White House, which is what we wanted, because we wanted to make it seem like the terrorists attacked the White House, right? Again, this is according to the theory. So
that one is interesting, but I would definitely hesitate on that one because there were communications between people on the plane and their family members that were recorded in terms of like, okay, we're gonna try and storm the cockpit now, or like, love you, goodbye, and whatnot.
And no one said it was the U.S. government.
Yeah, at least not. You know, I had watched a YouTube video on this, and one person in the comments actually had a victim's husband as their teacher, and I wish I could remember her name, but this woman had been a flight attendant on the plane and had texted her husband about what was happening, and he, as a teacher, had apparently taught a class and talked about his wife who had passed. And then a student from that class posted this comment on YouTube, which I read. So for our listeners, you're hearing like a fifth or sixth source here. Take it as you will. But it sounded legit. And yeah, nothing mentioned there about like a last minute, like, oh no, this is fake. Or I think we would see more about that. Or I would hope that we would see more.
I mean, but then again, if that was the case, you think the recipients of those text messages or calls would be allowed to speak up by the people, the powers that be, that are trying to cover this up?
Yeah, I mean,
no, they wouldn't.
I guess not,
but then of course it's also the fact that like with cover-ups, we've talked about this before, it's really hard to like keep things covered up forever. Like I think after 10-20 years, if that part of the theory was true, then something would have come out. So I'll definitely give you some credit that it is more unlikely that it is than it is likely, because I feel like something would have come out by now, even if it didn't come out then. Like it's been long enough. And one other thing I wanted to mention was there's a part of the theory that talks about the air defense stand down that took place the day of, and basically to summarize, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, it's called NORAD, issued a stand down order, or rather, the claim is that they issued a stand-down order and deliberately scrambled fighters, right, like fighter planes, late to allow the hijacked airplanes to reach their targets. And according to this theory, NORAD, this command, had the capability of locating and intercepting the planes that were going to attack that day. And the fact that they failed to do so, to the theorists, indicates that the government conspiracy is true, that they allowed this thing to occur. And there's one conspiracy theorist, his name is Mark R. Elsis, whose words I take with a grain of salt for a number of reasons, because I've looked into this guy. But he said at the time that the only explanation for this was the fact that the Air Force was ordered to stand down on 9/11 because of obvious reasons, right? I I mean, like with everything in this episode, right? Like I won't get too much into like my personal feelings on this, but I will say that that is super weird. And Norad's explanation for this, super boiled down, basically, is that since a commercial airplane hadn't been hijacked since the late 70s, there wasn't really a network of communication that was established between commercial airlines and this command organization in order to be able to alert the command organization quickly, like expeditiously, so that the command could then send out these fighter planes.
So that might not have been possible.
Right. So like that's basically their explanation that like, which that's still terrible. That's like negligence, like failure to plan. Like that's still bad, but it's definitely not intentional, right? But yeah, that's basically what they said. That there wasn't a way to like do it expeditiously because they never planned for it, and so therefore once the commercial airlines, once these planes were hijacked, the Air Force wasn't able to be notified very fast. If anything, I think what was it, Flight 93, like they sent out a like notification, or United Airlines sent out like a notification to NORAD, but like NORAD, which is basically the Air Force, didn't receive that until after 3 minutes of the plane having crashed in Pennsylvania. So like literally, what are you gonna do at that point? Or like the flight that struck the Pentagon, like the Air Force didn't know about that until like 3 minutes before it struck it. So
yeah, at the very least, this is definitely some awful negligence. And like, the thing is, when you think about it, imagine how tough of a call that would be to make, to say, we need to shoot down this plane and kill all the passengers because we know it's going to hit a building. That's some like diverting a train stuff,
Right. I mean, is that what the Air Force would do if they had been able to catch up with the plane on time? Would have they just shut it down?
I mean, I don't know. I actually have no idea. I mean, ideally, it would be to take control of it somehow, but yeah.
Right. That's what I would think. But I guess I don't know how they would do that. If you really think about it, how do you do that? So if they would just shoot it down, then I agree with you. Yeah, that would be I wouldn't want that job. But interesting. I think that we have left the audience with a lot to think about. You certainly left me with some more to think about that I hadn't considered. So that's this episode. Boy, oh boy.
We love this. This is international talk. We should, yeah.
I know. Yeah, we hope you guys liked it. Also, big announcement. Might as well do it now. Scary Talk is going away soon. I think this is a time, right? So I mean, this is episode 90.
This is perfect, yeah.
So, hi everyone. Scary Talk is ending 10 episodes from now. Scary Talk 100 will be the last episode of Scary Talk. So, surprise!
Oh my god.
Yeah, so Sunny's moving to New Zealand.
That's
and
not true.
I'm going underground. I'm prepping for World War III, and so we won't be able to record because there's no internet in my bunker. And so the podcast is ending in 10 episodes, which you would think would be 10 weeks, but at this pace, it's more like 10 months. So really, you'll have us around for a while.
Oh my god, what a self-roast. No, but if you have any like feedback to give us, messages you want to send, things you want to suggest, yeah, get it in now. And yeah, really looking forward to these last 10 episodes, honestly.
Yeah, and I am sure once this comes out, we're gonna be getting a lot of messages about topics and whatnot that people have been like keeping to themselves, or maybe listeners who've never commented or contacted us are finally gonna do so, which I think is fantastic. But definitely do hurry up, because I know that at least for us right now, we have planned our topics through episode 98, so we literally only have 2 free slots. Of course, if one of you guys brings up something that you really want to hear or that we find really interesting, we definitely be willing to switch out one of the things that we have planned for that thing, because nothing's set in stone. But definitely hurry up.
Yeah, and also just like,
yeah,
we want to hear from you. I'd love to hear from anyone possible before we wrap things up.
Yes.
So
Yes. But also, I'm sure once we do wrap it up, we're gonna have a. I just know we're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna be like, "Oh my god, we miss you guys," and you'll see all of that, and I'll send it to you. Like you'll see all of that.
We should do like a yearly reunion or
Um,
something.
Oh my god, dude! And if we do, it's gonna be with Shannon and David, and Shannon's friend who was on one of the bonus episodes one time, Riley. Literally everyone who's been on this podcast.
Yes, literally. Didn't Ashley do like a guest episode or something?
Oh, and Ashley and Annalise and Jared. Oh my god, never mind. We can't fit everyone.
That'd
Sorry,
be a
Riley,
real
you're not gonna be
party.
in it. Oh my god, dude! I cannot believe I recorded an episode with Jared. That was so cool of Jared to like
That's really funny.
get on here
I
with
need
me
to listen to that
and read
one.
creepypasta.
Oh yeah.
You need to listen to it. I want to listen to it too because I think it's very endearing. Because like he really, I don't think he'd ever even listened to an episode
Jared is
before,
funny.
and I was like, right, I was like settling on a new co-host, and I was like, hey Jared, like, while I'm doing this, would you like to record an episode with me? And he was nice enough to be like, yeah, totally. Like I wasn't actually considering him as a co-host, but I just wanted someone to be on an episode with me, and he was down. And you should listen to it. It's
Okay,
good.
okay, totally. Dang, Andre, so you just like had people as guest hosts and then you were just staking them out for new co-hosts.
Yes. And I just realized that you didn't really know that because you came in literally late in the game. Like you came in last at the game for a good reason though. It was because I knew that I wanted you. And that's, I mean, and that's why you came last. But still, I mean, listen, it's the truth. It's the truth. I wasn't actually considering Jared for co-host. I know that Ashley was on an episode with me and I think David or maybe just me. But she was busy and I wasn't considering her. It like came down between, I think, you and Annalise in the end, and I knew that Annalise was very busy. She let me know at the time, and you weren't. And
So
I was
everyone
like,
else
and also
was
you seem really
busy.
interested.
And that is how
So,
I made it.
So I went with you, but that was not. You were not my second choice. You guys were both. You guys existed both at the same time during that time because I was talking to you both at the same time. So
I'll take it.
So there's that. Okay. So I don't want you indignant or anything. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Again, remember, if you have any topic ideas, do let us know. We are at Scary Talk on Facebook and at Talk Scary on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, dude, don't let the bug beds bite. Don't let those bite. Also, don't let the Mothman bite. And just take care. Just take care. Sunny, anything
Couldn't
else?
agree more. Take care. Don't
Take home someone and then take
don't
care of
let
them.
the
Ooh.
bite bed bug. And
Yeah.
live your best life, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Good night.
Good night.